Welcome. Poetry has long been a way of remembering and digesting the impact of war on people and their countries. For many in Sri Lanka, the wounds of the long-running civil war are still raw, despite hostilities ending in 2009. The conflict, which arose from ethnic tensions between the majority Sinhalese and the minority Tamil, lasted for more than a quarter of a century. The work of Tamil poet Cheran is rare, and that is only one of a few to cross that ethnic divide and be translated into Sinhalese. He has now released a collection of his poems from the past 30 years in a book called In a Time of Burning. Joining me in the studio is Tamil poet Cheran. Thank you very much for being with us here on Impact.
Thank you.
How do you see your role as a poet in a time of conflict?
I do not believe that the poetry has the power to make people either carry an AK-47 or to change the world. But I do believe that the poetry, at any time, whether it is during a crisis or it's during a peacetime, has an important role to play in terms of fine-tuning the finer elements of heart and changing people's imagination and moving them towards understanding the nuances of life, nuances of the conflict, thereby changing people individually, not as a collective.
I've been reading your collection this morning, and one of the powerful poems is called A Second Sunrise, about a moment that many in Sri Lanka will know in 1981 when Sinhalese policemen set the Jaffna Public Library on fire. 95,000 books were destroyed. We have some images, I think, from that time. And the poem says, "What happened? My town was set on fire. My people lost their faces. Upon our land, upon the wind that blows upon it, an alien stamp." How was that for you when something so powerful happens? How is that to deal with as a writer?
I was a very young university student then, and that was one of my very early poems. I had a misfortune to witness the burning of the public library. And I used to be a member of the public library, and some of my formative experience in terms of reading novels and short stories and poetry, that was because of that public library. And I witnessed the burning, and we could not do anything. Because I was on the next morning I was there, and we watched the Sinhalese policemen laughing at us and saying, you know, laughing at us. Right? They are the ones who were responsible. So, you know, that was in 1981. And that is when I wrote the poem, The Second Sunrise. And it is very interesting to know that there is this particular term that I use, an alien stamp on our land. And if somebody reads my poem, one of my latest poems, the theme, the alienness, how the entire state and the society has been alien to me in 1981, that still remained the same, unshakably.
There is still, though, an effort in your poetry to reach out, to kind of talk to both sides, and your poetry has been translated into Sinhalese. In this poem, A Letter to a Sinhala Friend, you say, "It will not take many days for you and your friends to recover from the shock of meeting me, an ordinary man, from an unseen and distant land where you had heard we sow lead shots from guns instead of seeds, a place half full of two-story houses and half full of terrorists." And later in the poem, "Did our different languages after all put such distance between us that we could not smile together?" How difficult was it for you to take that position of reaching out when such horrific things were happening? Was it because both sides were committing atrocities in this?
Well, in a sense, the fundamental issue with Sri Lankan situation is the nature of the state, nature of the Sri Lankan state, and how the state has constructed all these divisions, and embarked upon the project of ethnic oppression. So I do not believe, and I never believed that the ordinary or the average Sinhalese person was somehow responsible for any of these things. So I not only had large number of Sinhalese friends, as writers and activists. I also had a lot of time and energy. I spent a lot of time and energy in cultivating that kind of a relationship, especially after 1990. So that is why most of my important poems have been translated into Sinhalese. And I have a significant following among the Sinhalese artists and writers, including some Buddhist monks in the southern part of Sri Lanka. So I do not think that is an issue that is there. But the problem is when there is a very strong, powerful state is actually an ethnic, chauvinist, racist state embarks upon a project, then it is going to be difficult for the people that belong, that majority community people, to understand, to comprehend, and to reach out. Because the information that they receive is controlled by the state. And also, whatever the policy is being articulated by the state, is going to be extremely difficult to cultivate. And that is why I still feel this notion of reconciliation is not going to be effective in the Sri Lankan context.
That is sad to hear that you feel that way about reconciliation, but I'm going to ask you to read a poem called Forest Healing, which is a bit about reconciliation in both languages. We have a little bit of the poem actually behind us here on the screen. So please.
So you want me to read in English first?
English first and then
okay. The forest healing. We set out to heal the still smoldering forest, not a bird in sight. An empty sky above the sparrow's flight path. No one knows how to gather the bones scattered on the ash-covered landless land stretching to the far horizon. Yet, what else can we do now? What else can we do now when an alien people celebrate and dance, mocking our flowing tears as we pour out the healing milk? There is nothing now to quench the heart's fire. No witness to the drop of blood, not yet dry. There is neither sea nor wind for us to dissolve the ashes, proclaim an end and close our eyes. When will there be a forest healing? When will there be a forest healing?
And do you have an answer to that since you wrote it?
Not now.
You don't think there will be a time?
The whole idea is that the poem talks about a kind of closure. The title, the idea of the poem is a Tamil ritual called Kadatu. That when somebody dies, you take the body and cremate outside the limits of your village, in the forest. When you burn the body in the forest gets mad. So you need to heal the forest. So you go after 3 days, gather ash and bones, and then do some kind of ritual and pour milk.
Can I very briefly ask you what has been in the news the past few days? You are now living in Canada, you've worked there for some time, you're part of the Sri Lankan diaspora there, and your Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, has said he's going to boycott Chogam. How do you feel about political statements like that now?
It's a good and wise decision, and I hope that position would re-inject some sort of a moral fiber into the idea of Commonwealth and the institution of Commonwealth. At the same time, I also would like to mention that this particular position is a bit strange for the current Canadian government. The way they treated the Tamil refugees, the way they implemented the policies towards refugees, it's so appalling. And this is a kind of extremely strange position for them to take.
The role of the Sri Lankan diaspora, the situation they face, is another whole discussion. But thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your...
Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you.